Ah yes, full AT towers, a truly magnificent staple of 90s computing glory. That's in most scenarios, but in mine, having full AT towers is kind of a nightmare. Let me explain. Don't get me wrong, I really do like full AT computer towers, but what I don't like is the logistical issues that come along with them. Have a look at this full AT 486 for example. It's nearly 700 centimeters tall. That's just like crazy to store, and then times that by about 4 and you have a real issue on your hands. All of my full AT towers are really deep in storage because they're just so big and bulky and really impractical to use. So today we're going to be case swapping one of my full AT systems, a Pentium 233 MMX with a Voodoo 1, into this lovely mini AT tower. Turning our full AT system around, as we see on the back, there is a pretty big selection of expansion cards installed. Namely, the most notable being the Voodoo 1 card as well as the Sound Blaster OR64. But let's have a look inside of the system. Even the lid is really bulky to take off. This is just another reason why a mini AT tower will be a much better solution for this PC. Now that we're inside of the system, we can clearly see all the expansion cards, so let's remove them. The first one we have here is a Sound Blaster OR64, followed by the PCI video card, which is an Alliance Semiconductors. Then we have the networking card, which is an SMC one. And last but definitely not least, we have the lovely Voodoo 1 card. I'm pretty happy with this configuration as is, but I will be making a change to the sound card, which you'll see later. Now it's time to uninstall the motherboard. It was a pretty tedious process to get it out of the plastic standoff, so I've skipped over it. But as we can see, it just came out rather easy once I got all of that done. The motherboard in this system is a Gigabyte one, and it features a 430TX chipset, making it one of the fastest Socket 7 boards available. You may remember this motherboard from an earlier video where I upgraded this PC. Now I'm going to uninstall the power supply, which is a modern one from the old case, and I had it mounted very jank because I had to make sure the fan was pointing inwards for airflow. We've basically got the case empty at this point, so I'll go ahead and get our mini AT tower in. I didn't transfer the drives out of the old case because I prefer the creative drive in this one. So let's unscrew the lid of this case now and have a look inside. Once inside, I'm going to remove the old power supply, which would have originally came in this case. It would probably be alright, but I really don't want to risk it, so I'm just going to install that modern PSU I had in the old case. After removing the motherboard tray to get easy access to the AT power switch, I had to remove it since I couldn't disconnect the actual power leads from it easily. Now I'm going to convert this switch to an ATX one, since my motherboard actually has ATX power support on it. So it's kind of a modernisation in a sense. Now I'm going to convert this AT power switch into an ATX style one, so converting it from a latching switch to a non-latching switch. The difference between these two switch types is that a non-latching one will not stay bridged unless you have it pressed, whereas a latching one will stay bridged if you press it and then unbridged if you press it again. The way I'm going to convert the switch is by simply just removing a little pin which holds it down. So this way, when you press the switch in, it immediately comes right back out. Once that was done, it's now time to attach this ATX power switch cable to the AT switch. This was an annoying process, but here's the end result. A now converted ATX power switch to fit into an AT case. So when you push the button, it doesn't stay engaged, which is perfect. Now all that's left to do is screw the power switch back into the case, and at this point we're ready to install the motherboard. I'll first install it onto the tray, which is a rather easy process. It would be amazing if motherboard trays was still a thing today, but unfortunately they're not. Once the board's installed onto the tray, now we can install it into the system. This is one of the benefits of a motherboard tray, as I was saying. You just install the motherboard in an open space and then you can simply just put it into the PC case. Like, how simple is that? With the motherboard in the case, now I had to install a few connectors, like the floppy, IDE and PS2 mouse port. Now it's time to install the power supply. And I was a bit concerned about the fan pointing upwards, but it's really the only way I can mount it in the case. This isn't really that good for the power supply, but since the computer probably won't be drawing the full 550 watts, I'm going to take a risk and see how long it lasts. And I don't plan to use this computer all the time either, so it should be okay, but I'll have to keep an eye on it. Now we have to organise the power supply and plug in all of the wires, and once that's done we have to hide away the majority of cables which are excess and not needed on a Pentium computer, which is 20 years older than the power supply itself, such as PCIe, CPU power, all of that is unnecessary. Once that's taken care of, now it's time to install the expansion cards again, starting with the Voodoo 1 card. Next up, I'll install the PCI video card, which is a Diamond branded one with an Alliance Semiconductors chipset. I don't need a fancy 2D card for this system since the priority is 3D gaming, so yeah. Now I'll install the SMC networking card. This is just a solid card and I've had no issues with it under Windows 95, so yeah, it should suit this build perfectly. Instead of installing the Sound Blaster OR64, which I previously had in this system, I'm going to instead install this Sound Blaster OR32 card, which has some RAM on it. I'm not sure if this is better or worse, but I really like the design of it, and having RAM slots on your sound card seems really cool, so yeah, I think it'll be a perfect match for this build. The last thing to do now is install the hard drive, which is this CF IDE adapter. It just requires a floppy power connector, as well as an IDE cable, and once we have those plugged in, we can simply install it into one of the slots within the system, and just like that we have a pretty decent hard drive solution. The build is now finished, so let's have a little look at it. Doesn't that OR32 card just look lovely in there? I think it's much more fitting than the OR64. But yeah, this system isn't the neatest in terms of cable management, but isn't that normal for every 90s PC? I would say so. But yeah, I'm really happy with the way this system turned out overall, so let's try it out. It boots into Windows 95 first try with ease. Now it's time to play some games. The first game I decided to try was some 2Rock. And as we can see, it appears to be working since that lovely 3DFX logo showed in the beginning. And once we get into a game, yeah, it appears to be working perfectly. I really like 2Rock, so this is going to be a great PC to play it on. The next game I tried was SimCity 2000, and it appears to run perfectly on this system. I've had this game not work on a few of my systems, such as 486s and Pentium 3s, but it seems as though this PC runs it beautifully, and this is awesome since I've really been meaning to play some SimCity 2000. Now I tried out Revolt, which always seems to struggle on this configuration. It was released in 1998, so a Pentium CPU is just a little bit too slow for this game, and especially a Voodoo 1 too. But you know, it's still totally playable if this is your only option, but I'd much rather recommend like a GeForce 2 to run this game since it's a lot smoother. You probably get about 20 FPS on this configuration. And last but not least, I decided to try out some Descent 2. Now, I'll be completely honest here, I have no idea how to play this game, but what I can tell you is that it runs very smooth on this PC, and it is a very playable experience. The game seems fun though, so I'll definitely have to learn about it at some point and give it a try with knowledge on how to play it. Well, that's about it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this case swap. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.